So now for this next session, I have my good friend Nicolas with us. He's been with us before for the book reading club, and still have another big book reading club session in a couple of weeks. But today, Nicolas is going to talk to us about Spring Boot and Kotlin, a match made in heaven. So I'm very happy to hear about that. And the sponsor for this session is going to be Zero Turnaround, which is some kind tricky to do a presentation or actually introduce Zero Turnaround, since Simon is the one that usually does that. But Zero Turnaround is a company that develops tools that help Java move faster. One of their tools is JetBrains that allows you to reload your application without zero downtime. So please check them out. And without further delays, I'll pass in to Nicolas. So Nicolas, you'll have 45 minutes for your session, and we'll have like 5 minutes left to the end for the questions and for the Bangalore JUG and for the Slack channels. So please feel free to start whenever you want.
Okay, thank you very much, Roberto. Welcome everyone to this session about Spring Boot and Kotlin. First, I will share my screen, and I will show you the nice slides that I have made just for you. Is that okay, Roberto? Can you give me feedback that everything is working fine?
Yeah, we can hear perfect.
Yeah, everything looks perfect.
Thank you. So thank you very much for having me, for inviting me. Hello to Bangladesh JUG. That seems like a nice audience you have. Welcome to everyone who is following on the YouTube channel to this talk about Spring Boot and Kotlin and how they can interact together. Just a quick word of introduction. I'm Nicolas Frankel. I work for a small startup called SAP. I work on the Hybris e-commerce platform as a consultant. So I go to customers and integrate this platform in their information system. This is how I earn my living. And otherwise, I do talks. I have a nice blog, I hope. And you can follow me on Twitter, and I will have references at the end of the talk. And now, to start, I won't insult you by telling you about the Spring Framework and Spring Boot. Just a quick work of recap that the Spring Framework is a very good framework that you can use to start your application. But the problem is that when I was doing pure Spring Framework project, like some years ago, is that I told my team, guys, go take some time off. I will take the nice dependency. I will put everything into the POM and then come back in 1 or 2 days. And it took me a lot of time to craft the correct POM that I wanted. And now comes Spring Boot. And Spring Boot, if Spring Framework is like a chicken that needs to be cooked and prepared and whatever, the Spring Boot is a ready-made chicken, and you just need a little ingredients that you need. And afterwards, you can really start in a couple of minutes, not days. Also, if you there is another in my opinion, very big incentive to use Spring Boot is you have out-of-the-box features like the Spring Boot actuator, which gives you a very important way to monitor your application without writing even a single line of code. So this is a Spring Boot port. And about Kotlin, Kotlin is a language developed by JetBrains, the guys who are doing the IntelliJ IDE. And Kotlin starting as a way to, as a solution to their problem is that IntelliJ was developed in Java with millions of lines of code. And after a time, it gets very hard to maintain such a huge code base. And Java has many qualities as a language, but it might be a little bit hard to understand sometimes. It's not very fun to maintain. And so Kotlin was a solution for them to try to get a better language and to be able to better maintain their own code base. And recently, you might have heard that on the Android ecosystem, on the Android platform, Google is now fully supporting Kotlin, which is huge news and gives a huge boost of credibility to the how can I say, to the lifetime of Kotlin. It's not only one single company with like small team of people. There is a whole bunch of companies who are interested about Kotlin. And so on one side, you've got Spring Boot, which gives you a huge boost of productivity. On the other hand, you've got Kotlin, which is a language which also improves productivity. And how do we make them work together? So the good thing about Kotlin, which perhaps you might be less familiar with, is that it's open source. So it's not because it's developed by JetBrains that it's proprietary. There is a GitHub space. There is a Slack channel if you're interested. Before, the first time it compiled to JVM bytecode, so it plays well with Java, but it can also now be transpiled to JavaScript. And there is a current experimental way to compile it to native code. So you can run your Kotlin code directly on the machine without any JVM. For me, Kotlin is a simpler Scala. It offers a lot of features without, let's say, without many ways to shoot yourself in the foot. So Kotlin as Scala, it gets inspired by Scala, by Groovy, by all like previous languages, and it tries to build upon them. So for example, it's functional and object-oriented as Scala. So you can have, if you are like used to object-oriented programming in Java, it's very easy to start with Kotlin. If you are more about Java 8 streams and lambdas and stuff, it gets you the same features, and even better, as we will see later. It is static.
Nicolas, are you with us?
Separate. Yes.
Okay, we stopped seeing your slides and we lost your voice for a few seconds.
And now it's better?
We can hear you, but we cannot see your slides.
That's a problem. I will check if I'm still sharing my 2 seconds. That's a bit screen share. Yeah, I'm screen sharing.
Try refreshing your browser just so that you rejoin again.
Okay.
That looks better. So if you share screen now.
Yeah, we can see you now.
Guys. So about null safety, basically there are different types for a type that can be null and a type that cannot be null. So the compiler knows whether it can be null or not, and you as well. So if you have a variable of type that cannot be null, there is no need to check if it can be null, because by definition it cannot. And it eases the way you write your code. There are no checked exceptions. I think that exception and checked exception were a nice experiment in Java, but obviously didn't work out so well. It creates a lot of boilerplate code that you have to handle. It makes the code not so readable. So in Kotlin, there are no check exceptions, just like runtime, only runtime. You have, like in Scala, named arguments. So basically, you can call your method with the parameters in any order, as long as you set the name of the attributes. And you can have default values, which helps a lot. Because in Java, since you don't have optional arguments, when you have the method and you want to provide different overriding methods of the same method, then you need to write as many methods as you want, and calling each other, you need to chain them and then in the body of the method call pass the default value that you want. In Kotlin, you write a single method, and then you can directly give the arguments in the method signature, the default values. You have lambda, of course. You have extension function, and for me, this is the killing feature, and we will get to that later. And that is very important for me. You have 100% Java compatibility. That means that calling Java code from Kotlin, and more importantly, calling Kotlin code from Java is guaranteed. That means that you can start migrating your application to Kotlin bit by bit. You don't need to do a big bang because they don't play nice with each other. It's really part of their ADN, and it works pretty well. So for me, the main benefits are it's more expressive than Java. If you have seen Venkat's talk this morning, he was talking about simplicity and terseness. That is the point. It's not because you've got less lines of code that it's more readable. In that case, Kotlin gives you that. You have less lines of code and it is more readable. Thanks to extension function, it can be better regarding the object-oriented paradigm, and of course, it's functional, as I told. So here is a very, very small hello world in Kotlin. So the main benefits here for Java developers is there are no semicolons. Yes, in Java you have semicolons because potentially you could write many expressions on the same line separated by semicolons, but it's not readable, so nobody does it. So in that case, it's better to say it's not possible to write many expressions on the same line. We drop the semicolon at all, and then you can write every expression on the same line, on a different line. Something that feels very contrived in Java is when you write a static method. Sometimes you need to write code that is not related to a real class. And basically, for example, you've got string utils or whatever, and you need to put them in a class. Why? Because in Java, every method must belong to a class, even if it's not really object-oriented programming. I mean, static is not really object-oriented programming stuff. Still, you need to do it because it's how the Java language is built. In Kotlin, there is no problem with that. If a method, which we call function in Kotlin, is not related to a class, then you put them in their own namespace. What is there also interesting? If you are doing a lot of UML, that might give you a good reminder that on UML, for example, first you write the attribute name and then you write the type. So this is closer to UML, and also the same as in Scala. Whereas first in Java you declare the type and then you declare the attribute name. If the return type can be inferred, it's not necessary to type it also. In Kotlin, we let the compiler do a lot of stuff that is boring for us. So this is hello Kotlin in Kotlin, like 3 lines of code. So as I told you, the killer feature for me is extensions. And I will take the example of the date utils or string util class. In Java, the string class is final. That means that you cannot extend it. And I mean, it's a good thing because you don't want to like disturb one of the most fundamental types. However, if you want to add behavior to the string class in Java, you cannot do it. So what happens is that you create a dateUtils class, and then you create, instead the dateUtils class, you create a static method that takes as a parameter the string that you want to work with. And that is completely not object-oriented programming. It's because of the fact that the string class is not final, is final, sorry. And that creates a lot of trouble. And then you have your own string utils, or you can use Guava, or you can use Apache Commons string utils, where there are a lot of utility libraries that add more behavior to the string class by like wrapping it into a static method. In Kotlin, it's handled in a much more elegant way where you can, the syntax is able to add behavior to an existing class. In the end, it will be compiled just as a static method, just like a string utils, just like any other Java code. But the way you look at it, you type it in a way that looks like groovy code, where you just extend any type with the behavior you want. And that is really, really great. And now without further ado, I'd like to start coding a bit because I've talked perhaps too much. And it might be interesting to see some code. So the first thing is that Kotlin is a first-class citizen in the Spring ecosystem. That means that if you know about the start.spring.io and you create your Spring Boot project with that, it's completely possible to choose the Kotlin language. And now, afterwards, choose your dependency as you want them. Or if you're using IntelliJ, when you create a new project and you create a new Spring project with the Spring initializer, then as well, you can choose Kotlin. And basically, this is one such project that was initialized here. You've got a POM. Perhaps I might get it a little bigger. And everything was taken from this Spring initializer. The Kotlin plugin is already configured. You don't need to do nothing. You can start coding right away. And here is the main class. And as you can see, it's a bit different from what you would expect as in Java. Again, I told you in Java, you need to put the public static void main function inside in a class. Here, it's not required because we can have this main function outside of it. And then we have our classical main Spring Boot class annotated with Spring Boot application that we call just afterwards. Let's start with a very simple controller, a REST controller in Kotlin that I will call hello controller. It's Kotlin class. So since it's a REST controller, let's call it annotated with REST controller. And then we create a function. So some people say that coding in Kotlin is fun because every time you need to create a new function, there is a keyword called fun. And we say hello. It returns a string. And it says that. And I don't forget to have the request mapping. That tells me hello. And that I can start. And normally, after a few seconds, if everything was good, I can go there and have my hello vJUG. So this is very simple example of a Kotlin controller. That we just coding in Kotlin as we coded in Java. Like 10 years ago, people coding in Java like they were coding in C or C++. There is a good thing in Kotlin is that if an expression consists of a single line, then we can change its syntax by using, this syntax. And return can be removed. So we just need to do that, and it won't change a thing. The other syntactic sugar we've got about Kotlin is that here it's pretty obvious for anyone that the return type of the function say hello will be of type string. But in Java, the compiler is pretty stupid. You need to tell it, hey, I will return a string. In Kotlin, the compiler is much smarter, and it can tell you, hey, I know this is a string. So you can remove it explicitly. Of course, for application libraries, or when you want to make it very obvious, or you want to have a more generic type, a more abstract type, yeah, please specify it. But here it's an application and it's string. We just need to return a string. And of course, if you are using IntelliJ IDE, there is a hint that it's a string in all case. So now if we just restart the application, I'm using DevTools, by the way. So if you are using Spring Boot, please use DevTools. It's much quicker to start. I didn't change anything. And here I have created my, my controller as a one-liner, which is super useful. Now I will create a new controller to highlight a new nice feature of Kotlin. I will create, I will say it's a greeting controller. And again, I have a REST controller. And I will say greet, functions greets. And here now I want to greet someone. So I will say that somewhere on the path, there is a path variable. I will tell who, and now you know the trick. Say hello plus who. And here I need to have a request mapping with greet who. So obviously, if you even if you don't know about Kotlin, if you have a bit of Java experience, you know that it will return. Sorry, I forgot about the curly braces. And it will return hello plus the string that is passed here. But imagine that we need to add a quotation mark at the end, like that, for example. It starts getting not very readable. And for example, if you're doing like a GPA with GPA QL, you need to concatenate a lot of string. It's not very great. And in Groovy and in Scar, there is this nice stuff that is called string interpolation. We've got the same in Kotlin. So here we can replace this concatenation. And by the way, IntelliJ tells about it. We can say, instead of using this concatenation, we can have a dedicated syntax where inside of string, if you have $signs, then it will get replaced. Now I need perhaps to restart because I added a new controller. And if we go here and say greet vJUG, and now you've got another microcontroller. Very, very easy. That is pretty useful. Now what I can do also, as you can see here, my controls are pretty small. And if I need to get from one controller to the other, perhaps to check that they are under different request mappings, then I need to switch tabs, which is not great. That is, sorry, that is not necessary. That is not great. Java mandates you to have one public class per file. In Kotlin, again, this is not necessary. So we can have like, let's say, a controller file. So I will rename this one, this file to controller with S, controllers. And I will remove this one and put it here. I can remove the greeting controllers. So if you are developing here, of course, my font is a bit bigger, but if you are developing, it might be much better because you can have you can see a lot of more code in one window, which increases a lot your productivity. You don't need to switch from tab to another one. The next point that I want to show you is how to use like a dedicated class. So here I will create another controller. And it's a REST controller again, REST controller. There is a request mapping on slash welcome, slash who, of course, and it says welcome. But here, instead of using directly the variable, I will go through a dedicated class that I will call welcome, which has a who and a what. Okay? So I will create this class, welcome, val who.string, val what string. And I still using the syntax like that. So here I would say just, let's say, welcome. Now, the thing is that I want that welcome becomes a default value. I don't want it to do it in my controller. I want to do it in my class. In Java, I would need to create another controller, another class that has a constructor with only who, and then, as I told you in the slide, then pass the default value welcome in the what and call the first controller. In Kotlin, it can be much easier than that. I will say just welcome here, welcome here, and this becomes an optional argument because there is a default value. And because of these optional arguments, then I just need to pass only one single argument here. Of course, nothing prevents me from saying something like that, but it's just option. Now, if I get back and I say, welcome, JUG. And again, since it is Spring Boot, nothing has changed. Since I pass an entity, by default, every default mechanism kicks in, and it's serialized in JSON. That is pretty cool. Now, the next step is about creating something which we might inject, because we are using Spring Boot, so probably we normally should be doing a lot of injection. And so far, we didn't inject anything. So the first thing to do is to create a repository. So we will be using Spring Data GPA. We will create a repository, a service, and inject them in the controller. So here, I use Spring Data GPA, if you are familiar with that, which means that I only declare the interface, and Spring Data GPA will fill in the code at runtime. Pretty useful. Second stuff is to create a welcome service. And I will just need to do that so it becomes more readable for everyone. And the welcome service uses the repository to find everything. And you see here that in the constructor, I'm passing the dependency. And that is also very interesting in Spring Boot, is that in like 99.99% in Java, you have one single constructor. So Kotlin merges the concept of constructor and the concept of class declaration. You declare the class as you declare the constructor. Of course, it's still possible to declare additional constructor, but since generally this is not the case, it gets the thing more readable. Something that might be interesting is that here you see a val, which means that there will be a getter to this attribute. Since it's a val, it cannot be reaffected. There will be a getter, there will be no setter. If you want to have getter and setter, then you use var. Then you will have a setter created for you. Now, why did I use this private val? Is because not only I don't want no setter, but I don't want no getter either. I mean, it's not the state of the welcome service that is passed here, it's just a dependency. So this way you can completely encapsulate your welcome repository inside your welcome service. I need to do the exact same thing here for the controller to inject the service. So private val welcome service. And I will create a new method, which has no variable, and we can call it welcome as well, or welcome all. It will welcome everyone. And we can here, oops, we can here pass all the welcome service to get all. Then here you see I didn't declare the return type. It was completely inferred by the application. And it's really, really, really eases my life. I just want to return, however, I want to return a list. So what did I forget? I forget to here say it's an entity because it will be using GPA. And here I also need to pass an ID on anything. So here I need to pass an ID. I restart the application, and normally it should fail. If everything I did is right, it should fail. And now if I say vJUG, it fails. And it fails because now I'm using a Kotlin class with a default value. And here it has no default value. So I need the GPA standard mandates for every entity to have a no-R constructor. So here there is a no-R constructor because there is a default value. But here I need to do something like that, probably. So if I restart the application at this point, it should probably work. And yes, it works. However, I did something to please the GPA standard. I had to say that who is not a string which cannot be nullable, but because I added that, it says that this string can be null and the default value is null. That means that in any one of my class or everywhere, I can create a welcome like that. And in that case, if I want to access the who, I need to check that it might not be null. And I don't want to do that. I really hate that. I don't want to break my design. So the people at Spring, they thought about it. And in that case, what they did is that you can change your Kotlin compiler plugin. And what we can do is you can, I will just decrease a bit like that, so it's easier to read. You can configure the Kotlin compiler to check that in certain case, it can create default constructors without you being the wiser. So what I can do here, I will get back to my initial design because I want it like that. I really, really want it like that. I will just say hello here. And if I restart the application, so again, this is what failed before. But by using this GPA compiler plugin, it will add a NOR constructor. And this NOR constructor, it's even better, it's synthetic. That's why here it was cannot call it in my own code. It doesn't allow it to me. It cannot only be accessed through reflection. That is very, very, very powerful. Now it works again, and I kept the design that I wanted. So GPA is pleased, but I'm pleased as well. And that is great. What I might want to do now is here I'm using the at service. Everything is auto-discovered. I prefer to be explicit when possible. So what I want to do is to use the add configuration class. So there are some stuff that needs to be auto-discovered. For example, the welcome and the welcome class, because it's a GPA entity, and the welcome repository. But there are some other stuff that I want to instantiate myself because I want to be in control. So I will create a new package. And in this package, I will create a new class called auto welcome, for example. And in this class, I want to put the entity in the interface. And here, it's not a controller anymore. It's just say, let's welcome. Here, I remove the add service annotation. So this is what I want. And now I need to declare it myself. So here, I need to declare a bean. And this bean is a controller. And this controller is a welcome controller, which needs a welcome service, which needs a welcome repository. So the welcome repository needs to come from here. I will get back to that later. Sorry, this might be more readable. And now I can pass the welcome repository. Now, again, there is another constraint brought by Spring Boot, is that in your Spring Boot application, your configuration class and configuration methods, so the ones which are annotated with like this configuration and admin, needs to be non-final. And in Java, it's very easy. You don't even think about it because everything is non-final. You can extend everything unless you tell it's final. Kotlin, it's completely reverse. You need to tell that it can be open, that it's not non-final. So here, in order to please my friend, I must say like that. And now it should work again. So the only thing that I did here is I went from completely auto-scan configuration to an explicit wiring and configuration where I could. What did I forget here? Parameter 0 of constructor welcome that could not be found. Here, it should work. Welcome controller. What did I do wrong? Interesting stuff. So what I can do is, because I always have a safety belt, what I can do is I can remove everything. Let's remove. I will use my friend Git to reset everything and to give me the right commit. And I will check that. So names of the class have changed a bit. Don't worry, it's not very important. So here I have the REST controller and the welcome service in one class. And here I still have the welcome repository in the entity in the other class. I knew what I did wrong. Since I changed the package, it should be here. The application should be in the auto package. That's what I forgot. That's the demo syndrome. That's okay. So it still works. However, again, because of these constraints, I need to have this open keyword, and I need to have this open keyword. And again, this is very boring, because if I forget about it, then it will complain that it doesn't work. So likewise, there is a plugin for that. So there is a Spring plugin. And it requires another dependency. In that case, it's all open. So you can have some classes which are annotated in certain ways to be declared open for you automatically at compile time. That prevents you from like forgetting some stuff. And it still works. That's great. Roberto, how long do I have still?
Like 7 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so the last thing that I will show you before the questions is to use the Kotlin DSL stuff. Kotlin DSL is super great because here you see that I'm still using those annotation. Sorry, yeah. Now I can also, of course, remove the open modifier. That is very important. And it still works. Let's do it, and we'll check. So the last thing that I want to show you, is the Kotlin DSL. So it's another way to declare your dependencies. Instead of using like class path scanning, instead of declaring using annotation, what you can do is basically you can directly declare them using a specifically dedicated DSL that is available in Spring.5. So here it's a bit of a shot to the moon because it didn't work in one of the milestones. I'm using the snapshot, so I hope it works. I hope the snapshot won't get updated and everything will break. What you need to do in the POM is you need to add like this reflection library because you need Kotlin now to do some reflection. It's not as easy as before. You need to declare that you will be using JVM 1.8. Otherwise, it won't work. And as I told you, there is this latest Spring version. So don't try this at home. It's very dangerous. And now I replaced my configuration annotation with that stuff. And here it's pure Kotlin. The good thing is that it's completely explicit. There is no annotation. So that in turn means that you need to call it explicitly here and initialize the context yourself. That is not done for you. On the good side, however, is that you can have the same thing explicitly, and here you can see that how to inject the repository, the service needs a repository, is that you are using a function, a Kotlin function, so that is defined in Spring, that is not defined by you. If you are interested, you can check it in the Bing definition DSL, and that will get the right dependency for you. And you might say, hey, but it's magical. How before we had this welcome repository and we injected it, and now it's just ref, it doesn't work. Well, in fact, it's not only about ref. Here you can say, using Kotlin syntax, that it's a ref to a Kotlin repository. However, since the welcome service constructor only requires a welcome repository and nothing else, this can be inferred. So this is not necessary. We can remove it. And remember that previously we injected in the method, we injected the welcome repository. It came from somewhere. You didn't know about it. And still, nobody complained. It was natural for you. So here, it's the same. The thing is, for you, it might be less readable, but probably it might because you are not used to it again. So this is the end of my demo. I still have 2 slides to show. So the first is that if you're interested about a Spring functional and Kotlin, there is this guy working a lot on it. He's called Sébastien Deleuze. He's a French guy. And you have the link to the Kotlin DSL and more. So I showed you only a bit because I didn't want to show you about the functional part, because you might know that Spring 5 brings functional improvements. That means that you have less annotation and more real explicit code, and you can be reactive and this kind of stuff. So I didn't want to show you. I only focused only on the integration of Spring Boot that you know and love and Kotlin. If you want to go further, you can check this one. And if you want to if you are interested in about reactive Spring with Kotlin, then there is a talk later this day by Josh Long. So the key takeaway for me is that Spring Boot loves Kotlin. Kotlin likes Spring Boot. You can code now in Kotlin your Spring Boot application like you did in Java. There is a whole infrastructure. You don't need to do any work around. You have plugins that help you with the build process. And now is the time for some Q&A. So if you're interested, you can read my blog. You can follow me on Twitter. I am on the Slack channel, so I can answer questions if there are not enough time. And last but not least, here is the link, the code I showed you today with a bit more, because I was a bit, I didn't have enough time to show you everything, but you can now, afterwards, check it with all the time you want. Now, Roberto, if you have any question.
Hey, Nicolas. Thank you so much for the awesome presentation. So I'll start by passing the word to the Bangladesh JUG. Do you guys have any questions, Bangladesh?
Do you guys any questions? So I have actually questions. Can you you showed in the bin definition? I mean, you inject using ref. So for single repository, because the welcome service requires one single repository, but the welcome controller also requires one service. I mean, welcome service. So can you ref?
Here, okay, that's a good question. Here you're telling me here the welcome service requires a ref. You could do something like that, right?
Right. So that was the.
Actually, no. This you can only do if the ref you are searching for is part of the Spring factory. And that's my point, because I want to be everything as explicit as possible. So here, for example, my service is not annotated at service. If it was annotated at service, then I could effectively, I could do that. But I don't like personally that my own kind of coding to have this magic auto wiring coming wherever it comes. So here I explicitly inject the service into the controller, and I will be happy if I could to inject the welcome repository in the service, if I could. However, the welcome repository is not under my management, because it's Spring Data GPA that creates it automatically.
Okay.
So I must find a way to bring it into my explicit world. And there is no other way than, to, in that case, to say, take the dependency that is required.
Okay.
Now, if you like auto scanning and auto wiring, then you don't need this bin definition DSL. The bin definition DSL is for people like me who likes to see what they are doing. If you are happy to have everything injected for you, so to use this annotation on your service, on your repository, you don't need this bin definition DSL.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I have another question actually. So do you have static keywords in Kotlin? I mean, we use static in Java, as you say. We don't need a static for main function. So if we had multiple main in the same file, or in different files, so how JVM gonna recognize which one main we actually want to execute first?
Excuse me, could you repeat the question? I didn't understand.
Okay, the question is, since we don't have a static main in Java, we know when JVM starts, it start looking the main function, and main function is static. It doesn't belong to any class. So in static, you see we have a main function here, and if we have another main function in another class, so how is going to recognize which one is our main function?
That's a good question. Actually, in the end, it still needs to be valid JVM bytecode. So when you see that stuff, the main function in the end will be created, and here you can see there is an error here because IntelliJ doesn't recognize it. But you see this Kotlin demo application KT, it will be one of the class that is created because since this class is called Kotlin, this file is called Kotlin demo application.kt. In the end, any function that is not related to a class in Java bytecode will belong to a Kotlin demo application kt.class in the bytecode. So that's why here I cannot just do that because it won't work. Need to put KT because I know that in the bytecode it will be that stuff.
All right.
Perhaps I can find it here, depending on how. Yes, here you can see.
Okay.
And you have the public static main function that returns something.
All right.
Good question. Other questions?
Yeah, we have. Sorry, Bangladesh, do you have any more questions?
Okay, no, we don't have any more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we did have a few questions on the Slack channel, but we also need to wrap this up. So since you mentioned that you're also on the Slack channel, maybe you can go there and answer the questions directly over there. If you're so kind to do that for us. In the meanwhile, we're just going to wrap this session. So thank you, Nicolas, for being here with us and doing this awesome presentation on the vJUG24.
Thanks for this opportunity you gave me.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you, and we'll catch up in a few weeks for the book reading club session. Thank you so much, Bangladesh JUG, for being here with us as well. We're going to do just a few minutes break until the next session, so please stay tuned with us and join us in a couple of minutes.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day. Have a good vJUG24. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys, for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you, guys, for joining.
Welcome. Have